Hello everyone, Margot here. I'm out on my very chilly morning walk. I'll probably wait a few seconds so people hop on, but I tried to do a live yesterday and my phone just got really cold and died because it was already close to being 0%. It's funny, my partner at home has joined. But he's wondering where I am on my walk. But cool. So I guess there's a few things I wanted to talk about this morning. First of all, today is the Day of the Ancestors, which is very exciting. I live in Duluth, Minnesota. Someone just asked, where are you? So I'm up here in the woods on my dirt road. And today is the 10-year friendiversary of me and Marin, and I am flying with my whole family to Arizona to be with her while she has baby number 10 sometime in the next little while. So it's a very exciting big day for us here, and meaningful in a lot of ways. And I also wanted to, before I get sort of swept up in the big travel day and hanging out with Marin the next 2 weeks, wanted to just sort of finish my thoughts from yesterday. If anyone was on and saw the beginning of that, I'll probably just kind of start at the beginning. So on my morning walks, oh look, a snowflake. Oh, you can't see it. It's okay. There's just a couple in the air. On my morning walks, I have been listening on Audible to the book Braiding Sweetgrass, and I really, really highly recommend it as just an amazing book for anyone who is interested in, living in a way that is more harmonious with the earth. It's just, it feels like a book that was written for someone like myself who is asking these questions around, how do we, so the chapter I was listening to just now was talking about how do we become indigenous to place, which is a question that I've thought a lot about and was a kind of centerpiece of a lot of the thinking I did way back around 10 years ago, funny enough, actually, when I was in graduate school for a short time. My partner was in a sustainable communities master's program, and so he and I would have lots of these conversations. And I'm sure this book is required for those classes now, because it's just so beautiful and rich and full of amazing information, and really has made me think a lot about, or it's helped me think in different ways and in more depth about what it is we do here at indiebirth. Yesterday I was talking a little bit about how the chapter I was listening to was about wild leeks, and this question of what is wild, what is domesticated, how do we honorably harvest wild things was what her question was. And it made me think a lot about this term wild pregnancy. That's a newer term in the last few years, and what does that mean? And Marin and I have had a lot of conversations about the term because we've seen it pop up, and we often are wondering what does that actually mean? And so I just have some questions, I guess, that I wanted to pose to you all to help you kind of think through these same questions. The other part of this book is about how each being has its own gifts, and with those gifts come responsibilities. For me, one of my gifts is that I am very good at asking questions, and often they're questions that make people uncomfortable. And often they're questions that don't have a solid answer. So, that's what a lot of our work here at indiebirth is rooted in, is that there is no right answer. There is no perfect birth. There is no perfect way to do pregnancy. There is physiology. There's what we think we know based on our best information from science, and also from the wisdom that has been passed down through the ages, ancient wisdom, and also the wisdom that's just within us, that our higher selves have access to, and that we have access to in a spiritual way. So those things are true. We do have information available to us about what our bodies need, typically, in a more general sense, to have, a smooth and this is where like the words fail me, a physiological birth, where the baby grows, is healthy, is born, mom and baby both are well, and the cycle is complete in a good way. But where I think things get really tricky is when we start affixing labels and we start ascribing goals. And to me, wild pregnancy feels like a goal, instead of an approach that honors, for a second, sorry about that. So to me, that term feels like a goal instead of an approach. I'll see people sharing like, oh, okay, maybe the connection will be better now. So I see people sharing that they're having a wild pregnancy, and for me, I feel like that's okay. Let's see if that helps. So again, sorry about the internet connection or cell connection or whatever is happening. I was saying that as people share that they're having, a wild pregnancy, using the internet. So that's not to say that I don't think the term maybe has purpose or usefulness, but I don't exactly understand what it is. And again, like I said here at indiebirth, we really are trying to join the ways and demonstrate a third way, because the reality is that we do live in a world where humans have been domesticated. Yesterday I was sharing a little bit on the live about how my partner and I, probably a little over 10 years ago, when we first got together, we went to a gathering called Feral Futures, and the whole point was to talk about like how do we rewild ourselves as humans, what are the skills we need, what are the tools we need, and I actually talked about it in our indiebirth book a little bit. I didn't say it was at this gathering, but it was at this Feral Futures gathering where I talked more with other people for the first time who are also using fertility awareness. So this is something I'm definitely interested in, and these questions of how do we become more rooted to the land where we live, how do we live in a way that honors the earth and our animal and plant neighbors and really feels sacred and honorable. That said, ascribing labels like wild pregnancy to me feels very not that. It does not feel humble. It does not feel grateful for the things that we have that are not wild, that our other human brothers and sisters have invented and yes, have been misused. The tools have been used largely in a not sacred way. Things like cesarean birth is the easiest one to sort of think through. But there are times where those tools can be used in a way that is sacred, is for the highest good, and feels really good to people. And, that's coming from me as a home birth midwife, right? Like, I think that that's where it gets really interesting, is Maren and I are both home birth midwives. We're both independent home birth midwives. We believe in women's abilities to give birth undisturbed, without our interference. We believe that is the truth. We also know from the work that we do, and that's where I think a lot of the difference comes in. A lot of like the really romanticized philosophies about birth are coming from people who don't have that much experience with it, especially in the midwife role, where we do see things, luckily rarely, and it's often it's a matter of perspective how often it happens, but Maren and I rarely see times when people want or need something outside of our traditional toolkit, the traditional midwife toolkit. And that's why I don't identify as a traditional midwife, because I do use tools that are not traditional to the sacred role of midwife. I do carry a Doppler. I do carry anti-hemorrhage medication, those sorts of things. So I think it's just this really fascinating thing where we as humans love polarity, and we love to say, like, there's industrial birth and there's wild birth and there's like nothing in between, and then set our sights on one or the other and try to like make things black and white. And that's just not healthy, frankly. And so we try to represent, again, even though we are home birth midwives, who support free birth, who support clients who want us in the home, who don't necessarily want us to do anything. I have clients who don't want me to listen to their baby with a Doppler, and that's totally fine with me. Who also support women who do want some more of that, technology and more modern knowledge. There are things that we've learned through science in the last few hundred years that are interesting, and things that we should think through and weigh as we make choices in our pregnancies and births. So that's sort of just a long-winded way of saying, like, we're trying to create this third way that is a blend of all the tools that we have available. That's like a thing that we say all the time, and I think it's worth repeating, is all tools can be used in a sacred way. It's how we wield them that matters. And so I guess I would just encourage anyone out there who feels like they need to label the way they're doing their pregnancy to really think about why that is. Like, how does that serve you? How does that serve you and your baby and your family to say, I'm having this type of pregnancy, instead of saying, I am having the exact pregnancy that I need to have for my, physical self, for my spiritual self. And that opens up the conversation in a very different way than when we say, I'm having this kind of a pregnancy with this type of care, or not that type of care. And it requires a lot more creativity and a lot more introspection, and it can be really hard. So, some might say I'm just perhaps bitter or something, because I definitely would not have said I had a wild pregnancy, either any of the 4 times that I've been pregnant. I have 2 living children, and for me, I'm just, there's these really hard things, right? So like, I was pregnant the first 2 times and miscarried in the first trimester. And I did do testing. So testing, not wild, right? But I wanted more information, and that was what was right for me. And it turned out that I did have very low progesterone, which is a whole conversation for another day, perhaps. I have a podcast I recorded about it a long time ago and haven't put out yet. But then I had to make a decision around, okay, well, do I want to, force my body or provide my body with something it's missing in order to carry, hopefully, a next baby to term? Is that something I'm willing to do? Because I do believe our bodies are wise. And so I had to grapple with the question of, like, well, maybe my body doesn't make enough progesterone for a reason. Maybe pregnancy would be really hard on my body. Maybe I'm not meant to have children. And those are like big, scary, hard questions, especially when you're a student midwife. And so for me, I did choose to do progesterone supplementation, and I did carry the next 2 pregnancies to term and have 2 beautiful children waiting for me in my house over there. And that was what was right for me. And if I had written off getting help, getting testing, that would have been a fine choice too. Like, that totally is a legitimate approach as well. But it was me and my soul and my spirit that had to grapple with those questions. And I'm really grateful, I am really grateful that I didn't feel dogmatic about what I was and wasn't willing to do in order to get what it was that I felt I wanted and needed. And so this is probably too long of a conversation because I bet my phone's going to die again. But, I had these 2 kids come to me in dreams long before ever knowing that I would struggle with my pregnancies, these are the first 2, and they made themselves known. And so if I hadn't felt that they were waiting for me, and maybe needing to learn, maybe I was needing to learn that lesson of not clinging so hard, right, to my beliefs and perspectives, and needed to learn that lesson of flexibility in order to be the right mother for them. So, there's so many layers to it. Do I really believe there's something wrong with my body, that I don't make enough progesterone? I don't know. On some days, yes, and on some days, that's actually what I believe, is that I had to go through those struggles and those trials and come out the other side learning something valuable before being ready to be their mother. So, anyways, that's all a long thing. I did not necessarily plan out everything I was going to say, and I have a lot more to say, but I just really thought it was worth sharing, especially in connection with this amazing book I really recommend you check out, Braiding Sweetgrass. It's so beautiful and gives such amazing perspective, and she really comes at her work in the same way. She's an Indigenous woman who comes to her work of ethnobotany from that perspective that she has as an Indigenous woman, and the teachings she has had through her life and that she has sought out from elders in conjunction with the hard science. She has a PhD, and it's this amazing blend. And in so many places throughout the book, I've felt like, yes, these are the words that I have been trying to find as we describe what we do here at indiebirth as part of our larger goal. How do we marry these two things? Because we have both of them, and we should be grateful and be giving thanks for the fact that we do have both available to us, instead of pushing away the things that have not been serving us as well just because they haven't in the past. I think we can use our imaginations and really reimagine a future where we can use all of the tools in the way that is right for each individual woman going through a pregnancy and birth experience. So that's what we teach at the indiebirth midwifery school. That's what we infuse into our care of our own clients, and that is the message that we hope to share far and wide. So if you resonate with that, I'd love if you sent me a message here. I'll probably check them in the next little bit while we pack up, and we're going to head on the road, on a flight, to Arizona this afternoon. So thanks for listening, and I hope that resonates with you. And if it does, I'd love to hear about it. All right, bye everyone.